Aloha and welcome to the Path of Me podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I wanted to create a sacred space for soul to soul conversations with people sharing their light through their passion, power, and purpose. Thank you all so much for being here. Let me introduce my next amazing podcast guest. Hey everyone, welcome to the Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I have the beautiful Angie Litvinoff. I hope I pronounced your name properly. She is a highly regarded guide, a ceremonialist, and modern day medicine woman, which I am so excited to deep dive into. Welcome, Angie, and thank you for being here.
Oh, Wendy, thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy to be in a circle with you like this. Absolutely wonderful. Be on
I
your
was so
pod.
excited to have this conversation. I wanted to start with maybe you providing a little bit of background. Like how have you become who you are today? I know it's a journey. So how did that start for you?
Ooh. It has for me personally, and I appreciate it's not the same for everybody. It's been a lifelong path. So it began at a very early age when I was introduced to some rituals and ceremony as a teenager in the US. And I connected with Native American spirituality. I then experienced a series of situations where I was put right in front of shamanic practices and shamanism and shamans. For example, at the age of about 18, 19, I became an interpreter for an Ecuadorian shaman, as though that happened to everybody. I didn't question it, it just happened.
Right.
And my own roots are Chilean, so I'm Chilean.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an unusual upbringing full of upheaval. I grew up in the midst of a military dictatorship and was exposed to a lot of very traumatic situations and events. And therefore it really catapulted me into a level of insight that I do not wish on children at all, but it really created an opportunity for me to heal and to grow and to really own my wisdom that I had acquired at such an early age and begin to process and unpack the events and situations in my own life. So it really, to answer your question in a nutshell, it was a culmination of life events and the healing path that a lot of shamans and medicine people have, which is never straightforward and often full of very unusual or traumatic events, and my own connection with gravitating towards something that really called me on a soul level. And then I trained formally. So I had formal training in shamanism and in natural medicine and homeopathy, and ritual. So I brought together those aspects of my life and really answered the path, answered the call for the path.
It's so beautiful. Did you have a specific mentor that took you, you know, guided you through this process, or was it a matter of eternal seeking?
Well, I have had several mentors in. I started so young that it all started very young. So my mentors changed with time, but I had several mentors along the way.
Mm.
And at each stage, there were teachings and instructions and learning at for different aspects of my path. So some of it was more based around ceremony and ritual and earth-based practices. Some of it was more around initiation and medicine and soul medicine and vibrational medicine. And some of it was more around the Native American, specifically Native American practices. So it really, it's I've gravitated to and benefited from a series of mentors throughout my life, but that spans over nearly 4 decades now. So it's I started very young, and
You've had a little experience with this, I
yeah,
see.
so therefore it was a process of really going to where it connecting to what my heart felt was right for that part of the journey and bringing the pieces together. So for me, as a medicine woman, I literally do embody medicine. I am trained in natural medicine and very highly experienced as a practitioner, and prescribe natural medicine.
It feels like soul medicine.
Diagnosed in natural medicine. Sorry?
I was saying it feels like soul medicine,
Mm,
truly.
mm,
You
mm.
know, mind, body, and soul medicine all in one. And I was so curious about what you've learned about yourself on this incredible journey as a healer, medicine woman, um, ceremonialist, in not only what you're offering, but what have you been offering yourself in your own awakening soul journey through this practice?
Okay, so in terms of just commenting on what you said about the soul medicine, absolutely, because my practice is very psycho-spiritual. So although my experience has led me to work with people in recovery from addictions, working with general practice, all of those things ultimately led me to a place where I specialized in looking at things from a psycho-spiritual perspective. So yes, absolutely, soul medicine, completely. And in terms of my own connection with it, with my own path, it's been a real journey for me, and it is a daily journey. The revelations that I experience on a personal level and the way that I apply the tools for myself, I see as an ongoing, forever evolving path of humility.
Mhm.
And also that it is for me the bridge between the needs that I have and the connection that I have with the external world and the spiritual world, because it's about self and soul and community. So that actually the perspective that I have is very much about a journey of decolonizing the way that we see healing, so that it is not egocentric. It's actually about how we can connect to an external manifestation of the world, not just the inner world, and not just what's going on in my own life, because actually what's going on in my own life and what's going on out there are related.
Of
And so
course.
the healing that is happening for me is actually directly related to what is happening out there and vice versa. So bridging that gap and connecting to it. So it is about ecology, it is about harmony, it is about oneness. Um, it's about the quest that we all have to connect to truth, and it's about our own truth and how we mirror each other's truths. About about integrity. So it's about lots of things, but they are all for me one. So the challenge for me is that the way that I communicate this very multifaceted way of life, which is actually not part of the dominant white male Western paradigm. So the challenge is really unpacking that and sharing it in an accessible way. And it is really sharing an extension of my life and my experience.
That's so beautiful. You know, I found that so much that we offer and support in others is unwinding the programming that and cultural conditioning that they have been kind of brainwashed to believe as truth about themselves, their worthiness, their integrity, their heart, you know. And I found that it's been really, really powerful to have the honor of supporting that journey, you know, for others. I think that your work is primarily focused on supporting women. Would that be accurate? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the the work that I do now, everything has led to this point essentially.
Mhm.
So the work that I do now is helping women to really connect to their voice and truth and vision in and rise in their own leadership, be that leadership of themselves in their own life or leadership within their work and community. And realizing that aspects of ourselves along the way, along the journey, in order to connect with deeper with aspects of ourselves, we need to let go and surrender. And that letting go, and you've touched upon that just now, Wendy, is that conditioning that we have on a cellular level. It goes very, very deep. It can be ancestral. It can be the values of society. It can be in this lifetime or past lifetimes, and the strong messages that society hand down to us. So we get to a point in life where part of us is starting to be really bothered by all this, and maybe we don't know why, but we know that there is something else. So it's that clearing enough headspace to understand where our intuition is, where our values lie, where our inner voice and truth are, where they reside, the healing that our soul needs and the repair that it needs in order to strengthen and connect and integrate. And so the clearing of the Akashic Records is a big part of what I do. Soul retrieval, integrating soul parts, and also acknowledging the letting go, the surrender, the welcoming in, and the walking through your threshold into a new stage of life. So it's all of this actually happens. A lot of it happens in midlife and beyond. So I attract women who are sort of 40 years plus because of the changes that one experiences on so many profound levels. So it's really a claiming of that wise woman, wild, wise woman, and beginning to understand what that really means on practical terms, how we can own that and really go out into the world on our terms. It's really radical and it's really bold.
Very powerful, I'd
An
imagine.
invitation.
I'm sorry.
It's an
Oh,
invitation.
it's an invitation. Yes, for sure. For sure. I've noticed that there's so much shifting, you know, on planet right now. We're going through a
Mm.
massive rebirth and reset. And since you're so connected, I feel, to the planet and the plants and nature, I was curious what you're feeling vibrationally as you tune in, because I know that we are taking this planet to light and the frequencies are rising, meaning the frequencies that the plants hold are changing. The frequencies in nature and animal life are changing. Everything has to be in resonance, energetic resonance, as we rise as a whole with our beautiful Mother Earth, you know. So I was wondering if you're feeling those shifts and what that, how that's presented for you.
I think people have an enormous potential to have an accelerated level, have access to an accelerated level of learning in a way that has never happened before. And that my own personal truth around that is because the nervous system is being challenged in a way that it wasn't before. So everything is faster, but as a result of which people are open in a new way or in a different way. There's a lot of consolidation, however, that does have to happen before that happens in a lighter way, and that is to do with the really to do with people embracing a level of recognition for life on every level without boundaries and without borders. So one of the things that has great enormous potential right now is for people to recognize empathy, for example, and embody it and embrace it at a higher level. And that is a conscious choice that they can be making, which could really change everything about the planet. The other thing that is happening is that where there was an enormous amount of control before in terms of how people lived and what people were the information people had access to and all that kind of thing. There is greater potential now than ever before to question and to have a different level of access to information, so people can actually really vote with their feet and say, no, I don't want this anymore, and I've had enough of this, and actually I want to do things my way and I want to do things differently. The other thing that has enormous potential right now is the ability to come together en masse in order to create harmony and love in the world at a very high frequency. And that, again, has to be a consciously led experience.
Yes.
And it does involve reevaluating and reassessing what is actually important to the individual. And that there are huge questions, and in terms of where I stand and in my truth as a human being, it is about decolonizing our thinking and the way that we live. In terms of the plant kingdom and plant medicine, it is really, plants are open to sharing knowledge at a very high vibrational frequency, and that vibrational frequency is incredibly subtle. So human beings have to catch up with this. Of course, we're always way behind, because there is a very sort of heavy-handed approach that is still kind of quite dominant, which is about, we have to experience things physically all the time. And in fact, with vibrational medicine, for example, I make medicine out of pure vibration. So, for example, if you want to connect to the energy and the vibration of any instructions or teachings or energy, you can create a connection with it, not necessarily by taking it physically.
Right.
Okay. That's not the only way to experience.
Right.
In fact, sometimes it is more beneficial to experience a connection with it at a different level, in a different way. So people still need to, understand that. I certainly feel that there is, and this is a feeling, and need to emphasize it is purely my truth and my feeling, but I certainly feel and know that there is huge potential for incredible change, and that is inevitable. It is coming. But in terms of how it comes, it will also be about connecting to teachings and to ways of life that very wise people have shared about the natural world and our connection to oneness and to creation at a very profound level. And it is about accountability. It's about social responsibility. It's about inclusivity. It's about loving each other. It's about no borders, and no separation.
I
And those,
agree 1,000% with that. I also feel that we have to expect for the law of one to come forward and prevail, that we will watch the established systems collapse, and it will look like chaos. It will trigger fear. It will feel uncertain. But we cannot step into the next vibrational plane of existence as a collective until what is established is removed. And so I've found for myself, I've had to be very much an observer and hold my frequency to support this shift and not get sucked into the chaos and drama unfolding, because there is a divine and cosmic order to this process. And I've found that people need to go in and explore the triggers, because that's the work. Our triggers are the work for us all, right? And I also feel like when we are going through incredible upheaval and turmoil, whether it's through a natural disaster or a political, chaotic type of experience, or, whatever it is that's really rocking our foundation, it's our responsibility to align in our column of light and access our own divinity and source and trust that and hold that and energetically send that out and connect with others who are holding the same light. So as a unified collective, we can hold an anchor space and mitigate a lot of the turbulence that is being felt vibrationally on the planet. I also think that people need to have discernment and be able to read their own energy so they can understand what is true for them and what is not for them. You need discernment. You need to trust yourself, love yourself, honor your path and your truth. And it's very difficult because, like I said earlier, the programming has really convinced people that they don't have any power, that they don't have a voice, that they don't know the way. When in fact, they have actually recently all been plugged into the keys and codes and frequencies of Christ consciousness and source, and the pure energies are available to each and every person if they create the space to tap in. It's there. So I feel tremendous change coming, and in a very accelerated, as a very accelerated experience for us all. And those of us who are the light workers here must really anchor into ourselves and ground ourselves and connect in to our, as I said, divinity and source light to pave the way.
yeah, the coming together of the collective is a process of gravitating towards good spaces where people can express themselves and grow, and also see things in a different way and communicate in a different way. So there's a lot of firsts that are happening, and also a lot of deconstructing of concepts and ideas. So it's absolutely enormous. I provide a very grounded approach where I look at what can one do, what can a person do on a practical level. So as I work with women, it's as a and women in midlife and beyond, where does that leave us in terms of where we can look to build our resources? And there are lots of, and I work very specifically with women, as I said, leaders and people who are taking leadership over their life and work. So it's also about creating spaces where things have things people meet in an intentional way. Okay, so the intention is really to explore the rhythms of nature and cycles that actually are very much part of who we are, and to begin this grounding by engaging and immersing ourselves with what is happening out there in terms of the season and how we are part of this wheel, are part of this medicine wheel, part of this wheel of life. So actually, by having a practical, immersing oneself in a very practical way. And then I use ritual and ceremony and processes and shamanic journeying and all sorts of tools that are very accessible and practical again, so that there are spaces of growth, of exploration. I work a lot with drumming, for example. I work with going to sacred sites and connecting with energy of the land. So there are lots of ways in which we can access things in a practical and grounded way. Because then as we look at our relationship to, I look at, sort of say when wherever you live, right, you'll be hopefully eating food that's been grown there. So even the grit, the grit that's in the very food that's in our bloodstream, that looking at the relationship we have on a cellular level with this wonderful connection of life, of existence, of creation. And that is a practical, reciprocal arrangement or a relationship with each other, with our external world, with our internal world. And it's making it accessible in a way that is relevant also to the stage that my clients and students come to me with. So yeah, it's, for me, it's grounding and it's practical and it's wholesome. It's also very out there, it's also, depending on your point of view. But for me, the language even that I use and the things that we do are very earthy. So that anchors us.
I think people can relate to that,
I think sometimes, it's also even, well, where does one begin, right?
Exactly.
How does you have a feeling inside. How does one follow? Well, actually, if you pick up a drum and you come and you beat the drum and you think, well, I've never done this before. Again, it's looking at all the things we've been told about. Well, I can't sing, or I can't dance, or I can't draw, or I can't play an instrument, or all those things we're told, because everything has a level, right? So which we define success, or whether it's worth doing, or whether we're worthy, or so many things. It pushes so many buttons whenever we pick up a paintbrush or
imagine the trigger.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then you pick up a drum in a well-held space with wise people holding the space, not just somebody who walked into it last week. Bless them, they'll be wonderful. But I'm talking about a
sacred space.
Solid, yeah, in a sacred context. And then you find yourself creating rhythm, and you realize that you are merging with this rhythm. And then I do a lot of work with toning as well, so you have like sounds that you make that are not words, okay, which is really your first instrument, bringing you back to this primal place. And then you're doing it with others, finding the courage within to connect and see this beautiful, and we often do outside. So yeah, you've got the bird singing or the trees or the elements, and then you're there. You are there. You have arrived at this beautiful place of connection where there's like, wow, I love this. I want to do it again. Angie, I want to experience this again.
Right.
And then it's like, well, what is that? That is true connection. And that is a gathering confidence and building of momentum. Well, if I can do this, I know that I can do more because I want to, not because society holds it in high regard, or because I'm doing it to achieve a goal, or because, you know, there's, you know, if you why you're taking will be about and showing up yourself and connecting, right? And so it might be the next thing be something like, well, what about my if I really express myself? And I'm not sure how yet. It might be dancing, it might be singing, it might be painting, it might be how I dress, it might be, who knows?
I think so much
But that
of it is getting people to release the attachment to the outcome and get immersed in the process of living and doing and being, because there's so much ego involved and fear of failure and not good enough and all of the limiting beliefs that need to be peeled back, because we're here to be the fullest expression of ourselves as a soul, whatever that looks like, and all that weirdness or being different. We're not here to conform. Each person has so many gifts, so much to offer. And once you can tap in through, obviously what you're offering kind of, I can imagine, cracks them open and plants seeds that they didn't even know were there. And you make everything possible for them as they can feel it.
And it's that permission we give ourselves, right, Wendy, which you know all about, of course, through your wonderful work. That sense of up until now, that person has been living their life according to a great deal of assumptions about what is expected of our behavior that keeps us there. And I'm not talking about necessarily on a conscious level. I'm talking about things that we assume.
Yes.
So and fall into survival mode in order to just keep going, right? And then suddenly this realization happens, whether it's through mentoring, because I have mentoring programs, or whether it's through workshops or trainings or shamanic immersions with me, that suddenly it's like, oh, do I actually have to continue to be like this? Because it's not me, it's somebody else that something happened with, and then I changed, and then I always answered to that situation, and it kept me there. And now I'm thinking to myself, maybe I don't have to do this anymore. And then they know they don't have to do this anymore. And then it is that letting go. That it's and the thing about it, which I think is very important to point out, is that often this type of process is sold out there in kind of a sort of a new agey way, that you have to kind of cleanse and purify, and then you walk away, and then you're kind of, well, actually no, a fair degree of that happens, but it doesn't mean that life doesn't come and bite you on the backside now and again and remind you that you went through that, and then you can go into a trauma response. But what happens every time is your relationship to that has an opportunity to shift again. And that your connection to yourself is strengthened through that process. And so that it is not about being perfect, it is about understanding oneself and why we respond the way we do, and giving ourselves the love that we need, and giving each other the love that we need in order to move forwards. So actually, instead of it being a set of instructions where we come out, it's not a car wash, you don't come out the other side all glitzy and new and completely transformed and changed forever and ever. It's actually what happens is we go through this process and we change, but we also do have a relationship to the past, so we don't sever ourselves from it. We do have reminders of it that do come up, And in midlife, what happens, and beyond, and menopause, what happens is that often these things that we thought we had dealt with do come up again. And they can come up in a very aggressive way. And nobody talks about this. People talk about the menopause symptoms and the night sweats and the what have you. But actually, what I'm talking about is on the psycho-spiritual levels of things are revisited. People can turn up, or maybe things happen that we've never experienced before, and other people seem to have done, and then it hits us hard because we experienced it for the first time, and it kind of makes up for all the times we didn't experience it. It's all kind of, it comes and so then it's that thing of, right, okay, as this is coming up for me, I show up for myself and give myself all the support that I need, be that with help of other people or bringing in some other supports in place that will help me, whatever it is I need to identify it and to make the changes that I need in order for my life to be supportive of the woman I am becoming. So maybe working 60-hour a weeks is no longer viable, and maybe it never was. But actually then it's like, right, okay, well, maybe I enjoyed it, maybe I didn't, whatever it was, I'm not going to judge myself on that, but I know change is coming because I can no longer function in that way. And it's no longer feeling like I can do it. So it's that sense of, right, well, then where is that transitioning me to, and where am I going with that, and what is unfolding, and what do I actually want?
That's
What
a
do I
huge place, right? That's a scary place for people who've never considered that, first of all. And also, I
absolutely
find as you go through these initiations of healing and you're peeling back the masks and the layers, and energetically, long before you take the action, that you cannot go on in that false paradigm because it doesn't align with who you're becoming. And I think a lot of women have grief, or men as well, as you go through these letting go periods where you're basically slaying the ego layer by layer. You're letting go of who you thought you were, who you thought you needed to be, of the things you thought you were chasing to prove your worthiness. It's this
beautiful.
eternal shedding of the self, the false self, so that you can fully emerge and come forward empowered, embodied, living in truth with who you are. And it takes so much courage because you lose things along the way, and there's grief in the process, deep grief along the way when you're losing career identification, partnerships, friendships, familial toxic relationships that are no longer serving you, and you understand, and ultimately you have to choose you right now. Vibrationally, it's so important to align with yourself right now and what you need. It could be space temporarily, it could be permanent, but honoring our truth, honoring our journey, honoring the mission we've been born here to complete and to be in service in whatever way that is, however that looks. People are feeling so pressed right now because you must slot into your lane. You agreed to do that on a soul level. You planned that before you arrived here. So I feel, like you said, this incredible acceleration, but at the same time, so much friction because there's fear and resistance internally of letting go, right? Even if it's not serving, it's comfortable. It's like an old worn shoe. So people want to put that shoe on and stay in the comfortable space.
Absolutely, it's the devil, so it's actually, it's actually that thing of it's like if you're unhappy or depressed, that you wake up, and I have experienced severe depression in my life, so I can speak from experience first, as well as those of my patients. through the years, but you wake up and you know that you can guarantee on feeling a particular way. When you are challenged by joy, you have to show up. So you actually have to make a conscious effort to raise the vibration, because it doesn't just fall on your lap. So that is why ritual and ceremony honor things so beautifully and so powerfully, because actually it's a process of creativity and honoring where we're at. But I want to backtrack a bit to what you're saying about grief, which is so beautiful. Because also, I mean, I talk about this a fair amount, because I like very relatable experiences for people. So one of the things that a lot of people have got experience of, even because grief is such a taboo subject, right, Wendy, is celebrity grief. So actually, sometimes people, when their favorite celebrity dies, or somebody that they really love, that's on film or music or whatever, it is easier to grieve for them than it is to grieve for somebody close. And there are lots of reasons for that, and we won't have time to go into that today. But the reason why I'm touching upon that now is because it is very healthy to have those relationships, because those people have supported us emotionally. So maybe we played their music, or read their poetry, or watched their films, and we engaged on an emotional level and had a relationship. And when they go, we can therefore also, whether we think we give ourselves permission or not, or whether we didn't even analyze it to that point, is that suddenly we can grieve for everything at once. So not only are we grieving for them, but we're grieving for other people we've not allowed ourselves to grieve about. And we've also grieved for all sorts of things we've lost and we are shedding. So it could be the long list, some of which you have already said, then gets pinned onto that. So actually we've got an outlet. Suddenly we have an outlet. And so the demonstration of grief, celebrity grief, can become enormous and sometimes feel disproportionate to the relationship that these people who've never met this person have to that person.
Right.
So, however, I always think it's quite wholesome and healthy, because, for example, one of the things that people find hard to grieve about is death of many kinds, including the death of a death of youth, or the death of a miscarriage. If somebody has had a miscarriage, women don't really given space to grieve for that. Or it could be grieving for where we felt at some point let down, and that anger that we can readily show is actually grief, and that grief has not had a chance to say, because maybe there would never be an opportunity to say, look, I really felt let down, or I felt vulnerable, or I felt alone. And so when we are able to express grief and then begin, what I would hope, you see, is that however it comes, that opportunity, it's the beginning of a relationship to grief that can change the way that we feel about expressing it. So that there are certain times when, and I do this work in a seasonal way, in a cyclical way, through the medicine wheel, and through looking at archetypes, that there are times when we can actually really pour out our grief, and it's healthy.
Absolutely.
That process of understanding how to connect to that aspect, and it can get very dark too, which is part of that. And the shedding as well is the huge release and letting go, potentially letting go. And also that we sometimes, as we get lighter, not sometimes, always, as we get lighter, we do need to let go of some things which we actually thought were all right. Because it's like when you go on a hike, okay, and you need to only take the essential things, and then you have to take stock and view, well, actually, I know I like that, but that attachment that I have to that material thing or whatever it is, or that memory or whatever it is, changes, and so actually, in order to lighten, we cannot carry everything. It is just the way it is. So it's actually changing our relationships, the way we see things and the way we engage with things and the way we connect to things. So all of that is in the mix.
I agree with you 100%. And I also feel that I feel such tremendous compassion for humanity because there's so much suffering held so deeply. Humans carry so much privately. They're not given the tools. And I really feel the world we're creating is going to be one of more community, as you said, love, compassion. And as we rise as a collective, I feel there will be more sacred space and conversation about these things, more tools offered, more exposure to other people who are transcending grief, for example, or talking about emotional suffering in a more vulnerable way. I really feel the veils falling. I really feel all the masks coming off, either gently or aggressively, depending on the level of resistance of the person going through it and what they're doing. Ultimately, to move forward, we will have to have and hold energetic resonance with the frequency here. So you will get there if you're choosing to get there. But you also control the intensity and the pace. So each person has a choice of how they're going to do that. And I watch many people really struggling right now to let go of that ego attachment to maybe always being sick or always living in trauma or addiction, or they haven't realized that that's not who they are anymore or who they're becoming, but their ego identification is so attached to it, but they
It's
can't.
also that, it's also that when you keep going in the one way that you've been told you should be, there's the one will rebel. If and the rebellion happens sometimes in a suppressive way, in an oppressive way, because you don't know how to break free. So you will go to places out of frustration because you're still trying that one way. And actually, the solution will lie, yes, within you, but actually, the avenue is your way. It is the road less traveled. It is the path that you pay for yourself, and that you are making it up as you go along, quite literally. So so that actually, that one, it's like ramming oneself against the brick wall continuously by following the dominant paradigm. So yes, it does have sickness of the soul, because the soul is being is being incarcerated. And there is anger there and rebellion, and that often will be self-deprecating and harmful to that person, because there's that frustration that is very difficult to vent in a place which is already imprisoned you, or not going to give you the outlet.
You're already in a straitjacket and you're trying to rail against that
going into that dead end constantly,
right.
Rather than continuing to I'll try and find a very quick example to illustrate that, so that if somebody's suffering from fatigue and exhaustion because they they work a lot of hours and they're trying to pay their mortgage, and they're trying. So the thing is, I know this sounds very simplistic, but I'm kind of oversimplifying it for the purposes of illustration, really. That instead of saying, right, okay, I know I'm going to go on a spa day and then I'll feel better by Monday, it's like, well, that doesn't solve the fact that it's happening in the first place. It's not looking at the root cause.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, what one needs to do is say, that's fine. Go, by all means, go on your spa day and enjoy yourself. And at the same time, look at, well, what do I want to come back to? And what in my world is actually making me feel like this in the first place? So it's not about covering things
Yes.
to add to what's already there. It's about blowing the cover off and seeing which ways one wants to go forwards, even if it's ideas on paper initially. Yeah, and not to be afraid to create a vision board and write things down and connect to feelings and say, oh, you know what, I like this. I like the way it's making me feel. And then the next stage is, right, how can I take the first steps to making these changes?
I love that. I love that, Angie. And I also feel like there's this confusion between self-care and self-love. So there's this addiction to going to the retreats, addiction, going. I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work. I'm going to the retreat. I'm doing the circle. I'm doing the thing. But you have to sustain that in your daily life. You have to incorporate the wisdom and the knowledge and the practices into your daily life for it to be sustainable, to actually move the needle. Yes, you might shed deeply, but this is a daily process of self-exploration and higher ascension. This is a daily and intentional process of reading your energy, understanding your emotional body, your light body, your biology. It's speaking to you all the time. So my feeling is we're here to teach people to embody these lessons, these knowings, these practices, so that they can take it with them in their daily life and not just, of course, come and have the powerful experience of release and connection, but sustain it in their lives. That has been.
Yeah, I think accountability, accountability is a different way of describing and adding to what you've said. And also that it's that I've always felt this, because maybe, partly the person I always was, but partly shaped by the humility that I experienced as somebody who actually lost everything at a very young age.
Yeah.
That actually I've never really wanted to experience the same thing time and time again. So, for example, I do think that if you climb the top of a mountain, or like a big mountain that, on the bucket list type mountain, once, that experience can keep you going for a very long time. But our society is like, right, okay, what's next? Okay, I've done that now.
Exactly.
So when's the next thing?
Yes.
And the thing of, hang on a minute, come back, rein yourself in and see, well, what was that about? And how can we feast and get nourished from the different levels of immersion that we experience? So that it's not about the next thrill, because it becomes, self-care and experiences become, it becomes very much about instant gratification, and my own relationship to plant medicines and all of that is all about, right, okay, somebody might do something once, and that wisdom they will keep unpacking for decades to come.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So it's that sense of how we relate to what we're doing and whether we're really fully present.
I was just going to say the presence and actually immersion of living each moment, of being here now, of moving away from checking boxes. People are under the illusion that the checking of the boxes is moving the needle, when in fact you are just going in circles, checking boxes under the illusion of growth. We have to embody our lessons. We have to embody our truth. We have to embody our light and live in each moment and bring it back. Like you're saying, you have climbed the mountain, bask in it, in the glory of it, in the struggle of it, in the lessons of it, right? Hold it and let it sustain you for a while is what I feel we're speaking the same language, right? We're saying, be here now, be in this right now, and I cannot believe it, but we're out of time. And that just was like a blink of an eye. And I'm so sad that we're coming to a close.
It's phenomenal, and so much rich content, Wendy. It's like that, this we've covered like about 100 things.
I think I tried to bend time so that we could expand this for ourselves and get it all in.
Wonderful.
It was so wonderful having you, Angie. Any parting words of wisdom for people who are going through these shifts right now and feeling a lot of emotion? You were so wise. I would love for you to offer something.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is get out and go for a walk and connect with something very childlike about that process. Pick up a leaf that you love and take it home and place it on a little altar space that you make for yourself. Pick up a twig and just appreciate its shape. Just really connect. Play with some stones or some gravel that you find in the woods. Just do that, and don't be afraid of doing that, and do it every week if you can. Access a local park, if you don't have access to woods. Get yourself out and breathe and be and connect, and try and do that regularly. So once a week if you can. And then I've got some resources, if I may. I've got some free resources, and it's called the Meet Yourself Toolkit, and that's got lots of nice things that one can do as well, which can help you through the journey of meeting yourself.
We'll include the links to your website and your resources in the comments, and I'll put your website.
Great, thank you. Yeah, to go out there and to just to really start the process of being and meeting yourself by little moments where you are giving yourself that nourishment of fresh air and connecting to tactile sensory moments when you can pick up a leaf or look at a blossom, and feel the sun on your face and, the wind in your hair, and really connect and do that as a habit, to get into the habit. And that is the beginning of something.
Oh my gosh, you beauty. I've enjoyed every moment of our conversation today. Thank you for the honor of joining us today on the podcast. I honor your work so deeply. I'm so grateful you're here at this pivotal time. And to my audience, thank you so much for joining us. Go out, enjoy nature, be kind to yourselves, love yourselves, and we'll see you next time. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.